Careful on the steps, everyone. Just take your time. There's a railing to hold on to.
Good morning. Hi.
3.
Hi, good morning.
Marika. So I will be your guide for the canal cruise. So yeah, I hope you've had a fantastic cruise all the way from Belgium. So you went from south to north. And yeah, we are now sailing on the water called IJ. And that is an old Germanic word for water. And yeah, this water is connected to the west with the North Sea Canal. And so that ocean ship came in from the west via the North Sea Canal. And that is a canal that is 21 kilometers, 13 miles long. So that's how far we are from the sea. And at the end of that canal there's a big lock. And so it takes the ocean cruises about 3 hours to reach Amsterdam, the passenger terminal. So keepers now use remote control, so they don't need those houses. So 28 of those were transformed into tiny hotels where you can dream big, sleep tiny. On the left you see that building that looks like a ship, but this is not a ship. This is the Museum for Science and Technology, and it's meant for children. It's an interactive museum about science, and it's called the Nemo. It was designed by the Italian architect Renzo Piano. Please say yes. Yes. I'm fed up with that story. After 30 years, no. But they built the dam that closed off the Chinese floating restaurants. It's called Sea Palace. By the way, you can also open the windows if you want. You have to use something to lose your hand. So that's not so handy. No. So this is sorry. It's a former, it's a smaller copy of the Jumbo in Hong Kong, this one. The Sea Palace, as we call it. It's a very good Chinese restaurant, and yeah, it seats around 700 people. It's lit up in the evening when it's dark. On the left in the distance you can see that big building with the flags on top. Looks like a fortress, but that is a 5-star luxury hotel, and it's called Amsterdam. But that building was built around 1916 style, kind of Dutch brick expressionism, almost a Dutch Art Deco, you could say, that they used between 1910 and 1930. And there's also residential quarters that were built. So this used to be the harbor, so that means on the left, actually that's the oldest part of town coming up. Today we call it red light district. But they had no red neon lights in the 15th century when we already had sailors arriving here. So we still call it also the old sailors' quarter. So in the 15th century we got the first seamen here from the Baltic states and so on, hanging around there. That's when the first women showed up there already. The seamen, the sailors are gone, but the women are still there. Not the same ones. The Bay and the Hudson River were named after Henry Hudson. This is the main Catholic church, the St. Nicholas Cathedral from 1886, built in a Russian Baroque style, dedicated to St. Nicholas, who's known as the patron saint of Amsterdam, the protector of the children, the sailors, and the merchants. It's a beautiful church. So yeah, it's that part of the city behind the Barbizon Palace Hotel. That is the red light area. You also have Chinatown in that area. It's a multifunctional neighborhood. People also live there. Yeah, if you go to the red light district, the only thing you're not allowed to do is take pictures of the ladies in the windows. That's like an unwritten rule. They are independent workers, like me. Oh no, but I only work in tourism. But yeah, so they pay income tax as well. So it's legalized here today. Here over the bridge to the left, there's a long street, fisherman's settlement, Amsterdam. And later on the name became shorter, Amsterdam. Amsterdam, dam in the Amstel. This is our beautiful train station. From your ship, you're looking at the rear of the train station. But this is the actual building from 1889. It was built on 3 artificial islands in the bay called A. And they built it on 9,000 wooden pylons. The architect was the Cathedral. They removed those bikes and they bring it out to the harbor area. Today along the North Sea Canal, far out of the city. The only way to get there is on your bike. And then of course you first have to pay a fine to get it back. And then you have to cycle 6 miles back against the wind into the city. How do I know this so well? There are 32,000 inhabitants. So still under 1 million. The white building, straight ahead, on the other side, that is the Film Museum. The Amsterdam Film Institute, they call it. In the archives, they have 37,000 movies. And the building was designed by the Austrian architect, the Lugan Meisel from Vienna. So your ship is now to the right in the distance. Huh? And this is the rear of the train station. Those are free of charge. They are the connection with the north for pedestrians and cyclists. So you don't have to pay for those ferries. The tower on the other side with the pole sticking out with a triple X. On the right side of the viewing platform you see a black structure. That's the Lookout Tower. It's an attraction because they have the highest swings of Europe on top of that roof. At a height of 300 feet, 100 meters. And when you're on the swing, you swing over the edge of the tower. That's supposed to be fun. And what's really weird is that you have to pay for this. They should pay you. But at least you're buckled up, as they call that. But honestly, you don't have to swing. Eh? You can buy a ticket downstairs in the tower, so you can catch the free ferry over to the other side. You buy a ticket, and then there's an elevator. Within seconds, it brings you to the 20th floor. From there, the views are great. There's a whole exhibit with pictures and explanation in English as well. So when you look north, you see the big lake again, where you have been sailing. When you look south, you see the old center. When you look west, you can see the wind turbines in the distance and close to the North Sea. So we're now going to the famous canal belt, part of the city of the 17th century.
Palace
A
of
World
Justice.
Heritage Site of the UNESCO. The whole canal system, the houses there too, all under monument care. And the word for canal belt is also very nice in Dutch. Grachtengordel.
Grachtengordel.
So the canals of Amsterdam, they were all made by hand. Why did they make canals? And they made them in half circles with connector canals in between. So why canals? Because it was practical. And the big toll ships, they were moored over here with all the goods from all over the world, with the Dutch East Indian Company or the West Indian Company imported grains from the Baltic states, spices from Southeast Asia, silk, coffee, tea from there, tobacco, sugar from the Americas, beer from Hamburg. All kinds of different products were imported and they were stored in warehouses along the canals. So we became an important staple market in the golden age, 17th century. Here we still see one of the locks, left and right. Because in the past we were threatened by the Zuiderzee, and so we had to try to keep the seawater out by closing the doors. We still maintain 16 locks here in Amsterdam because the sea level is rising, and it's not that far out, and so you never know. On the right we see the old railroad bridge. Today that's a restaurant. This was not a bridge that went up, it would swing to the side. And it's also a monument today. To avoid that too much trash ends up through the North Sea Canal in the North Sea, they have the bubble barrier. When you look behind you there, there's a platform. Underneath there are nets. It's the bubble barrier because when they refresh the water in the canals, they push through the, there's a pump near the lake. It pumps the fresh water from the lake in. The old water is pushed through the canal system that takes about 3 days to the west, and then via the North Sea Canal it flows out to the North Sea through the sea lock, or it's pumped out through the sea lock. But to avoid that plastic and other trash ends up in the North Sea, through the movement, the bubbles in the water, the garbage is drawn into nets under the platform. So that saves us at least a ton of waste a year. So it's a good thing.
How often is that done?
So here we are entering the Prince's Canal, Prinsengracht, Canal of the Prince, named after the Prince of Orange, William of Orange. And also here we are passing one of the old locks. And this canal, the Prince's Canal, was made as one of those canals in a half circle. And it was full of warehouses in the 17th century. So it was not like the canal where people lived. But today people do live here. It's all very expensive. Apartments. And these houses used to be warehouses before. Today each floor is one apartment, and the average price for an apartment is 2 million euros. Because you pay like 20,000 euros a square meter. That's about 1,000 feet or 100 square meters, 2 million euros on average when you buy. Rent would be like 3,000 to 3,500 a month. So this is where the highest incomes live. The dinkies, like the double income, no kids. Many expats, you hear a lot of English in the canal belt because after tourism, financial businesses are the main source of income here. High tech, as we have many expats in Amsterdam. This is the Brewers Canal, Brouwersgracht, where they had many beer breweries. Because before there was no drinking water, so they all drank beer, even children. So it must have been a jolly society. There was only 1 or 2% of alcohol in that beer. I will tell you in a moment. But today the tap water from Amsterdam is of such good quality that we actually call it municipal beer. So for those of you staying a few more nights, you can just drink it from the tap. Really, I never buy water, I just drink it from the tap. So yeah, houseboats, I will tell you in a moment all about them. Private homes. First we see a church on the right, and that is the Northern Church. It's a Dutch Reformed church from around 1622, based on a Greek cross, its construction, and it's still in use today. Today there's a market there. It's kind of a flea market with antiques as well. It's called the Northern Market. It's on all day. If you like markets, go there. It's walkable from the boat. Yeah, and there's not only that market. There's another one behind the church on a street called Lindengracht. It used to be a canal that was filled in, and that's a long farmer's market with the most beautiful flowers you will ever see, and the most beautiful cheeses you will ever eat. It's so yeah, that one is also, so there's two markets. This one, and behind the church on the street called Lindengracht, and this is the most popular market of Amsterdam, only on Saturday. So if you like markets, go there. I can point it out on the map how to go to walk there. So houseboats, we have around 3,000 of them, and yeah, these are floating homes. People live on them, they don't move. It started in the 50s and 60s, you know, after they had closed off the Zuiderzee, and that sea was a very shallow sea. They didn't need the old flat bottoms. You've seen them before, maybe with those sideboards. They served as a keel because there was no room for a keel underneath. So those sideboards, you could let them down to keep the boat stable in the wind. Now, those old barges were already turned into houseboats in the 50s and 60s when there was already a big housing shortage. At the beginning, many of them were illegal, and they were mainly hippies, artists, musicians. It was the alternative lifestyle. Well, these hippies have become yuppies because these houseboats are the same price as the apartments. Believe it or not, it starts from around €1 million. And you don't pay for the boat really, you pay for the slips. Because this is the UNESCO port, so here it is more expensive. In the center, in the canal belt. The owners also pay harbor tax to the city, and in return these houseboats are connected to gas running water, and electricity. That means they have a steady docking place and they are connected to the sewage system. So basically it's a normal house, only that it's floating. Unless they wave at you and smile from a houseboat, then it's an Airbnb. Buildings here, including the modern building, are part of the museum. Those of you who were lucky enough to be able to book a time slot, this is the entrance on the side, the modern building. That is where you come in, and then automatically you arrive at those steep stairs behind that turning bookcase that was hiding the entrance to the secret annex. So still a very moving story, of course. And Frank, she also wrote about the bells of this particular church in a diary, the Western Church. She could hear the bells chiming from the secret annex when they were hiding there. And yeah, the sound of those bells to her was like a soothing sound, comforting. And this is also the church in which former Queen Beatrix got married in 1966. It is also the church, the Western Church, where Rembrandt, our famous painter, was buried. Of the 17th century, the painter of the Night Watch and many other master paintings, many of them are at the Rijksmuseum. But Rembrandt, he went bankrupt at the end of his life. And then he had to move to the then poor neighborhood, which is here to our right, the Jordan. Of course, it's no longer the poor neighborhood. But when he died in 1669, they put him in a poor man's grave in the church, and he didn't get a name. So we never found out where in the church he was buried. And this was only weeks before we were liberated. It still remains such a sad story. Look on the right, nice flowers, by the way, on the boat. Can you imagine then that an expat who lives in this neighborhood wrote a complaint to the city last year if they could stop the bells from chiming at night because he couldn't sleep? And the answer was go and live somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah, they've been chiming ever since the 17th century. So you see, it's very nice to see the city from the water. And yeah, it is now still earlier, but later on everything that's floatable will be floating on the canals on a nice day like this. A lot of people have their own private boat, so it's really relaxing to be on the water, glass of wine in your hand. Everybody brings some snacks, and there's about 165 canals to sail on. So these boats are really for fun, for recreation. It's not to use them to go from A to B. It's really for recreation. Yeah, there's many of them. I cannot think of names at this moment, but there's many high-tech companies, because surface industries and financial in general are big here. Philips also, and here on the right you see he's a fan of Kim Kardashian, the guy who lives on this boat.
Oh, wow.
It's something else than a flat bottom. On the right you can see a houseboat museum. So this one you could visit to see what it's like to live on the water.
Houseboat museum.
And then the next boat, that wooden one, that is the one that where we saw that couple drinking bubbles at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's an Airbnb for sure. So we call that an ark, because this one has a concrete base, it's also floating, but these were built on purpose as houseboats, whereas the other ones used to be real boats. Oh. Yeah, she's fine. Yeah, she waved. It's an Airbnb. So these houses are all on the monument here, and it's a mix of centuries. We have houses from the late 1600s, 17th century, 18th century, new builds because there have been city fires all along, so they had to rebuild houses sometimes or take them down because of their poor condition. But what most houses have in common, they are narrow, they're deep, they're tall, and on top nearly always you see a hook and hoisting beam. Well, still today, those hooks and hoisting beams are used for lifting up the furniture when people move in or out. And that means with a rope and a pulley, the furniture is hoisted. They're steep and narrow. There is no room for a lift or elevator. But you see, that all has to do with the past, because in the past people had to pay tax according to the width of the front of the house, which means the wider the facade, the more tax you have to pay. And that is the reason why they try to build the houses here as high, as deep, and as narrow as possible, because in that way less tax was paid. It was a way of saving space in a city with not enough land. It's all marshland, and so they had to go up in the air to build the houses to save space. So that means when you live all the way upstairs, there's no elevator. You have to drag your groceries up sometimes 4 flights of steep stairs. And it's 1892, you see on top. It's 19th century. So it is also not easy when you have to move them. Think of a piano in a rope, or a washing machine. I also have my own experience with a beautiful Baroque cabinet. It's about 20 years ago. I tried to bring it up to the 3rd floor and it fell out into 1 million pieces. The one that piece of furniture that my ex, and this is true, he hated it. He thought it was awful, and I loved it. But he was in charge of that rope, so I still suspect he had something to do with it. But that's why he's my ex. But anyway, we also see it happening in Amsterdam. In total, we have like almost 1,900 bridges today, and that's even more than in Venice. Here in the center, it's a few hundred bridges, but in the entire city, it's almost 1,900 today. This is the former Palace of Justice, the big building, and it's been for years under renovation. And on the 1st of May this year, it's finally opened a new hotel, 6 stars, the Rosewood Hotel, Chinese chain. The rooms, the prices of the rooms in there start from 1,200 euros a night, without the breakfast included. You see the flag of Amsterdam on top of it. You see the triple X? The 3 X's have nothing to do with red light district. No, that is all from the Middle Ages. Amsterdam, small fisherman settlement, Catholic, the 3 St. Andrew crosses, they're called. And they once had to protect the city against 3 enemies. High water, the disaster Reformation with William of Orange here in the north. The new state religion became Calvinism, strictly Protestant, and the 3 X's were adopted into the coat of arms of Amsterdam, so they're the symbol of Amsterdam. This is a connector canal between the 3 main canals that were made in half circles. They made these connector canals in the 17th century, the Golden Age. This is where mainly shopkeepers lived, craftsmen, and the most affluent merchant families. They lived on the next 2 canals that we will see in a moment. So when you park your car here, you must not forget to get out on the other side. Without danger. And the reason for not having a car. And you know how much you pay to park your car here in the canal belt. It's €7.76. Very strange. Odd sum, but €7.76 per hour. So that's about $9 US per hour. So it's not a car-friendly city. Also, there aren't enough parkings for cars. This is the 2nd main canal. This has always been a residential canal. Very expensive. Still today to live here. It's where the elite, and still today, of the city lives. Keizersgracht, the emperor's building. So some people do a parking permit, then you pay less. Then you pay almost 400 euros for 6 months. Every 6 months you have to apply for a new parking permit, and it still doesn't guarantee you your own parking. You still have to drive around. Plus there's a waiting list of 27 months. So Again, it's not a car-friendly city, but what you do see indeed on the right, these electric cars are becoming very popular, although I prefer this one.
Any cars in the canal?
Yeah, but it's more bikes than cars that end up, because we have many more bikes than cars here. So the canals are about 12 feet deep, but we always say 4 feet of mud, 4 feet of water, 4 feet of old bikes. And you have a crane in because to get rid of evidence, because that is the main crime here. Bikes get stolen a lot, so that's why you have to lock them, otherwise they're gone. When your bike was stolen, you just take somebody else's. We call that recycling. We're not that bad, but they do get stolen. Today, especially e-bikes get stolen. So I am not worried because I have an old-fashioned bike. I still exercise. So they don't want mine. Here you see two little black houses. They're leaning out with their facade. You see, behind the car? Leaning forward. Two small houses built on one plot. Identical houses. When the houses lean out with the facade, they were built like that. Not like this. On the left you see now two houses leaning on each other. That is a different thing. I will explain that later on, but when houses lean out with the facade, they were built like that. And we call that built-in flight. Op de vlucht gebouwd in that. When you lift something up with the rope and the hook, it is more practical when the facade is slightly tilted forward. Otherwise those goods might bang against the wall and might be damaged. Or the rope, it scrapes against the brick. So yeah, that was done on purpose. This is now the Gentleman's Canal, Herengracht. This is where the oligarchs of the 17th century lived. And the most affluent merchant families would make fortunes in the trade. Oh, that bike will also end up in the canal. Eventually, I'm afraid. So, you heard the stories about the Dutch East and West Indian Company that they came to HOORN.
Yes.
Yeah, that was also a seat of the Dutch East Indian Company, had a VOC, wealthy trading city. So Amsterdam was the main seat of the Dutch East Indian Company and the Dutch West Indian Company. And you know, those merchants, they were at the same time also investors. They were regents, they were bankers. They had all the influence there. A few families. And often they invested in all those projects for those ships that went to explore the world, or they had lakes reclaimed because they could they built their country estates outside the new land. And so it was just a few families ruling the city in those days, and they lived here mainly on this part of the canal. It is called the Golden Bend, the Gouden Bocht. You see the houses are much wider here. We call them the city palaces, because these canals were made in different episodes, and after 1660 they dug this part, and then it also became possible, instead of one lot, to buy two lots next to each other, so the houses became wider. Behind them are beautiful gardens, really beautiful, often in a French formal style, symmetrical, sometimes still with the coach. We see the official residence of the mayor of Amsterdam, where the light is on with the two pillars. That's not her walking there. That would have been something. But with the balcony, we have a female mayor. Femke Halsema is her name. And you look up, it's a bit hard to see, but you see the sea gods, Neptune and Triton, decorating the top gables there. Neck gables, as we call them. Here you see two Moorish persons. You see above the lanterns at the entrance? Because there are also houses that were financed with money made off the slave trade. Especially Dutch West Indian Company was involved in this. On the west coast of Africa, they enslaved more than 500,000 people who were put to work at our plantations in the Americas, like Suriname in those days. With the goods from there, the ships returned to the Republic, like sugar and tobacco. And in the evening when it's dark, all 7 reguliersgracht.
Bridges in a row.
I exaggerate a little bit. It was that bad that I had a group this week and the lady said, I remember you from last year. You are the one with that horrible phrase. I said, what for? Oh yeah, and then I remembered. I said, when you say last night I saw 888 very beautiful gold yellow colored canals. That is the most horrible phrase in Dutch. That's vannacht zag ik 888 allemachtige prachtige goudgele grachten. And this is why we had to learn English here. So this is where the rich and famous usually stay. Last year, Bruce Springsteen. Also Taylor Swift. We were flooded with Swifties. Nice house here on the right. Also with more decoration. Something that you do not often see here because it was a strict Calvinist mentality in those days. No ostentation, no Baroque buildings like in Venice. It had to be a bit subdued. You can see the most photographed bridge of Amsterdam, the skinny bridge, Magere Brug, a white wooden drawbridge. It also appears in the James Bond movie Diamonds Are Forever from 1971. And it has 1,400 little lights on. If you didn't get it, take a picture of this one on the right. It looks exactly the same, nobody knows. But those 2 bridges still open because there's traffic here. This is a nice bridge. It looks a bit like those bridges in Paris over the Seine. The Alexander III bridge. This one is from the 19th century with the triple X and the coat of arms of Amsterdam in there. So that is the Opera House, also known as the Music Theater. This building has a nickname in Amsterdam. We call it False Teeth. To use your imagination a little. But it is a prestigious building. It's also home to the National Ballet. And it was built as one combination with the City Hall. That's the next building. City Hall. And we call this complex Stopera. City Hall is Stadhuis. Opera is Opera. So together Stopera was opened in 1986. Into the flagship. And that's a nice one with all the drinks on board. They do everything to attract customers. Nowadays they decorate those boats with flowers. By the way, they're not real. It usually makes you sneeze again. And that's the Mint Tower. And you see still the lower part of that tower was part of the medieval wall. Now was Amsterdam much smaller at the beginning. Here because they don't have the health certificate that you need. You can best order them online or buy them at the airport. That's a good boat. So for flowers you don't have to go there because there's maybe one stall with flowers still. But you see, visitors cannot bring the fresh flowers home. So that's why it's become so commercial with all these souvenirs. So you can skip that flower market. Go to the local market, much nicer for flowers. So houses leaning, how come? Houses are leaning because we are below sea level, like a big part of our country, and it's not all of Amsterdam. It's most parts of Amsterdam are below sea level, but there's also parts above sea level. But on average, you could say it's about 8 feet, 2.5 meters. Weird. And it's all peat bogs and clay. So the whole city was actually built on wooden pilings, like Venice. And the wood had to be imported. We didn't have it here. It came from Scandinavia mainly. Norwegian pine tree wood, or from the Black Forest. They had to ram those pilings into the ground until they reached the first stable layer of sand, or the second stable layer of sand. Deep down below we have bedrock. So yeah, you have to imagine in those days, 17th century, there were no machines to drive these pilings in. So you had those huge wooden constructions with guys sitting on there throwing weight onto these pilings to get them rammed in like rocks. And Amsterdam was certainly built on at least 11 million wooden pilings. So if you would turn the city upside down, you would actually see a forest. Huh? And as long as those wooden pilings stay underwater and there's no contact with air, with oxygen, no problem. But when there is contact with air, and that could happen when the groundwater level drops, now then a chemical process starts. And those wooden pilings, they start to rot. Houses will then sink into the ground and they start to lean. So that is what you see. Now, it is usually that the house is stuck between other houses, so it's not like they're going to fall, except for when you're on the corner perhaps, leaning the wrong way. But it is becoming a huge problem because we have more and more of these foundations that are rotten because we have longer droughts. Some are now too, because as long as there's no contact with air, it's okay. But then when the groundwater level drops, you have bacteria entering the wood, it starts to rot, and in the end they start leaning those houses.
Flea market.
That's the oldest joke we're making for 30 years already. It's, yeah. Now, yeah, they do sell the bikes that come, you know, I told you when your bike is removed from around the train station, they bring it to that harbor area. They have a depot there with maybe the Dutch East Indian Company. Well, the return journey to Indonesia took about 9 months. But of course, many ships also never made it because there were
Amsterdam
storms,
ship.
pirates, diseases. The National Maritime Museum.
Were there guns in those holes?
Yeah. Cannon holes. And here they created a swimming spot for the Amsterdammers. You see people are swimming there behind the wood. Wow. And in one of them, in old shipyards, they have
Parking problems.
street museum. And that is the largest museum for street art and graffiti. And the whole setting is so cool, and they have 150 huge wall paintings. It's really fantastic if you like modern art. They were created by